right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I don't know how I just keep getting kicked out as I start this thing, but let's get started. It's been 6 days since we had to watch that last football game. And I say football game in quotation marks because honestly, that wasn't much of a game last week. And I can't get this thing to mute anymore. There we go. I give it the old 70s treatment. Beat it until it works again. I really don't want to talk much about that game. That game is now 6 days old. It feels like a lifetime ago. I wasn't surprised by the outcome. I expected them to lose that game. The only thing that bothers me is that game should have been a 15-3 kind of ball game instead of whatever the hell the score was, 33-10, with 200 yards rushing by one of the worst rushing offenses in the NFL. And that's why I wrote what I wrote about them being so disappointing, because this is not – the offense is injured. I get that. Mm-hmm. You're starting a rookie quarterback. I get that. But your defense was – and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say this defense really started to play like absolute garbage from the Adebo injury on. They played badly, giving up some big stuff, but they at least simulated some pressure on Knicks. Mm-hmm. They at least were making tackles, but after the Adebo injury, from halftime on, it was just they were flat. They were uninspired. The last thing they wanted to do was play a football game. They just wanted to go home. And that was probably the most damning thing about the whole game, and why I was writing things like, it's time for Dennis Allen to go. Because if you can't inspire your team, if you can't get your team to play with the kind of energy it takes to win a football game, mm-hmm. then you have failed as a coach. And 3 games in 10 days, that's a problem. All that stuff, and you beat the hell. But you couldn't, that defense was flat. It had no energy. There was no enthusiasm for tackles. The guy who looked like he was trying the hardest out there was probably the guy who was coming off of a forearm injury, Tyrann Mathieu. The rest of them, they were just going through the motions.
Yeah. Again.
Yeah, again. And it kills me to see that, because I'm not saying they quit on Dennis Allen. I'm not going to go that far, because I don't think they quit. I just think they just didn't want to play. And that's not the same as quitting, to me, because I've seen the Saints team quit. The 2001 Saints team really quit on Jim Haslett those last 4 games. After the Rams game kind of sucked all the fight out of them. Mm-hmm. And they were more or less olaying players. And you can say, they were doing the same thing out there, but it wasn't quite the same. This was more like guys who didn't feel like they want to go out there and risk getting hurt like Adebo did. And they were making business decisions like, I'm not going to really go out and stretch out to make this tackle because I don't want to be the next one getting caught off this field. And that's what I felt like. That's not quitting. It's just like, I don't know. I felt like you just were out there, and it's just something to get through. until the next week. And we'll see what happens after that. And that is the most damning thing. I mean, Bob, I see you shaking your head at some things and nodding in agreement in others. I mean, do you feel like this team's quit on Allen?
I quit. Quit is a strong word. I agree with almost everything that you said. And I will say that this team doesn't respond to Allen. There is a difference, but it is just as damning if you are evaluating your coach. Yep. I mean, you are just coming off of a thorough ass kicking at home from a division rival. And now you're playing on primetime television at home against your former coach, and you can't get motivated?
Yeah.
Yeah, the players are at fault also. But again, when I'm evaluating a coach, that's the kind of thing that I am looking at. And this is most of this statement is my huge middle finger to a certain person and a certain group who aren't even worth mentioning specifically. Y'all want to know who? You can message me privately. But this is a defensive coach in Dennis Allen who can't coach defense anymore. You know what? That's a strong word. I believe he can coach defense, but your defense is an abysmal failure from your defensive coach. Denver had 225 yards rushing, after ranking 30th in the league in rushing production. That was their first 200-yard rushing game in 24 games, and only their third in the last 90 games. They had their season high in rushing production at halftime. 33 points. That's only the fifth time that Denver has scored more than 30 in the last 45 games. And we can go back to the historical production by Tampa Bay the week before, Philadelphia, Atlanta in the fourth quarter, Kansas City without their top two wideouts, their top two running backs, and without really a serviceable offensive tackle. This defense has given up 429 yards total on average since the Carolina game, 180 yards on the ground. You're giving up 130 yards to receivers like Juju Smith-Schuster, almost 200 total yards to Sean Tucker. I could go on and on and on, but this is just abysmal. And like I said, now you can't even get motivated and show a little bit of fight when you're playing your former coach the week after. You get taken behind the woodshed in your own house. It's time for a move. Obviously, the Saints management doesn't agree because the time to do it would have been Friday morning. And we sit here Tuesday night. Dennis Allen's still your coach, folks, which means simply this. And listen, I'm with you. I do not advocate an in-season coaching change. It just doesn't do any good 99% of the time. And that's A. B, the Saints simply don't do it. The Benson family simply doesn't do it. But it's reached the point where I believe it's counterproductive. Again, I don't think the players have quit on Dennis Allen or any of those coaches, but they don't respond to them. That is very close to the same thing. And those of you Allen defenders, and Allen and I have defended Dennis Allen until almost our dying breath. I know it's created additional ulcers for both you and I. You can't defend this. You can't use injuries as an excuse. Yeah, that's a reason for the offense not performing up to their abilities. But up until really the last game and a half, this defense has been relatively healthy with the same cast of characters. There's been a top 10 defense for the last 4 or 5, 6 years. They've gotten old before our very eyes, and now they're making business decisions as a unit. The pathetic tackling. Excruciating, critical fourth quarter breakdowns. Good defenses don't do that, folks. Good teams don't do that, folks.
Yeah, the mental errors are what's killing me, and that's kind of what I want to go to, because we're not saying they quit, but they're saying making the same mistakes, and you're saying they basically have tuned out the coach's message. Is there any way to fix this? I mean, these players, Demario Davis is out there saying that he is going to make an effort to get this team to tackle better. Tackling better, number one, would make a huge difference. But the other thing is the mental mistakes, the letting players run free late in the game when you know you have to shut the things down to keep them from making a play. And I'm thinking specifically about the Philadelphia game where they knew that tight end was coming over the middle. And instead of just bringing him down by staying in your zone and bringing him down as soon as he catches the ball, you let him run free, you collide, have the Keystone Cops look, and he gets a huge play out of it. And that kind of stuff just keeps happening over and over again. And Allen his message is, well, we have to coach better. We have to teach better. It's not a coaching and teaching thing anymore. It's something is wrong with the players mentally. They're not getting it. And I can teach someone why the Electoral College exists over and over and over again. But if you're not getting it, I can't just keep teaching the same way over and over and over again because you're just not understanding it. And that's clearly what's going on here. I agree with you. I think it's gotten to the point where they do need a new head coach because I think the message is not going through anymore. This happened to Jim Mora too. Jim Mora's message got old. The players were not responding the same way. And granted, he was missing a lot of his key leaders, Sam Mills being the latest one. And that really is what set off the whole diddly poo tirade, which was, I think that anniversary just passed.
Yeah.
And it was what, 30, no, not quite 30 years, 27 years ago. It was October of 1996. So that's almost 30 years ago, 28 years ago. And that was directly because he watched Sam Mills take apart his offense, and he could see Sam Mills's leadership on that young Carolina defense. So where I'm going with this is where are the leaders on this team? Where are the leaders who are holding their teammates accountable?
Right.
We hear them say certain things, but we're not actually seeing that out there. We're not seeing guys getting into each other's faces. I would appreciate a good fight right now on the sideline.
It'd show a sign of life.
Two players screaming at each other, and a helmet getting thrown. Because at least I would feel like they care about what's going on out there. But right now, it feels like they just don't care because it doesn't matter to them.
Yeah.
And that is the part that I want to see come this Sunday when they play Los Angeles. I knew I would say it one time. When they would play the Los Angeles Chargers, I want to see if there's any kind of sign of life out of these guys.
Yeah.
Now, conceivably, we could see Cesar Ruiz, Taysom Hill. Spencer Rattler may end up still being the starter because they're not sure about Carr coming back. But Lucas Patrick, you're getting close to Chris Olave. You're getting close to being at least a competitive level strength of an offense. Taysom Hill makes a huge difference. I've always said that. Being able to run the ball effectively and keeping the defense off the field, maybe that might be what it takes to get them to play harder because it's like the offense is doing their job. Can you do your job now? I don't know. I mean, what do you think is happening with the leadership of this defense? Can it be turned around?
It can be turned around to a certain extent. but not by the coaches, certainly not by the defensive coaches. It has to be the leaders on the field, the leaders in the huddle, the leaders in the locker room. The Cams, the DeMarios, getting Pete Werner back, I think is an underrated key. The Tyrann Matthews. To some extent, the leaders have to take over this team. I'm not saying a coup or a takeover or, hey, let's ignore the coaches kind of thing. I am saying be more forceful leaders in the huddle and on the field. Lead by example. Tyrann Matthew is universally recognized as one of this team's leaders, and he is. But he's one of the ones primarily responsible for the business decisions and the being out of position and the mental errors. The leaders have to fix their own game before they can lead by example. If they do that, and if you run into an opponent that you are A, better than, and B, actually play better than, that breeds a little bit of confidence. Which then create, confidence can be a snowball thing, as you know, Alan. So if those kind of things happen, along with getting healthy, starting to get healthy, you do build some confidence, and you might be able to should be able to string a few wins together. But I will say this. If all that happens, they can maybe even climb themselves back into contention with a little bit of luck also. But when you have team chemistry like that, guess what happens? Yeah, you can beat teams that you're better than. But what's going to happen when you run up against a team that vastly outcoaches you or that has an equal amount of talent level? I'll tell you what happens. A 4-17 record, which is what Dennis Allen's Saints are when they face a team that's 500 or better when they play them.
Yeah. And that's a damning statistic. It's just one of many damning statistics for this Saints team. And a lot of it is because of, I said this last Thursday night when I was at the game. There are better players coming out from the sideline to go stand with Drew Brees than are actually wearing Saints uniforms right now. And that was
even at their age.
Yeah, at their age. Yeah. That was like Scott Vegeta, Lance Moore, Drew Brees. Most of the 2009 team was out there. And they played for each other, and they showed tremendous leadership among themselves. They didn't need Sean to push the buttons. I mean, Sean did push buttons. Don't get me wrong. He did motivate them. He kept them humble. He did the whole mousetrap thing. Here's the thing about being a successful coach, and this is not going to sound right, but it is what makes a successful coach. You have to be able to manipulate your people.
Yep.
You have to be able to get inside their heads and get them to do things they wouldn't normally do. Vince Lombardi was a master at that. Bill Parcells was good at that. Sean Payton was good at that. Manipulating his people. I've told this story 1,000 times, but I love the story. The Irv Pankey problem from Lawrence Taylor. When Lawrence Taylor comes in, and Lawrence Taylor has already been league MVP. He's already been to multiple Pro Bowls. And here he comes into his locker. He's already won a Super Bowl. And he sees a plane ticket on his stool. And he says, "What's this?" Goes to Parcells, "What's this for?" And he says, "You can't," he says, "We're playing the Rams this weekend. And they've got to tackle him, Irv Pankey. I want you to fly down to New Orleans. You don't even have to change jerseys and send Pat Swilling up here to play for you because he can handle Irv Pankey. You can't, evidently." And of course, that sets Taylor off. You can set a cocaine head off cokehead off by telling him this kind of stuff. He lets out a few F-bombs and goes in there. Needless to say, Irv Pankey did not have a good Sunday that next week. But that's how he motivated people. He
Mhm.
messed with their heads. He got what he wanted. He got a pissed off Lawrence Taylor who was committed to showing his coach that I can beat the hell out of this guy. Dennis Allen can't do that. And very few coaches can. That's the thing. If you want to know the difference between a winning coach or a championship coach and one that's not a champion, it's the ability to manipulate people to get them to do what you want them to do.
Yep.
And that's what's not happening here. And the leaders aren't holding players accountable either. And so there's an empty shell of leaders. It's guys walking around with a C on their jersey, but they're not acting like that. And I'm looking at DeMario, I'm looking at Cam, I'm looking at Kamara and Carr and Matthew. You are the guys out there who are supposed to be directing these people. You're the guys who are supposed to go out there and chew ass.
Yeah.
That's why when everybody got all pissed off at Derek Carr for the way he was calling out the receivers like that, and Michael Thomas came out there, and Thomas had something to say about it, Carr's attitude should have been, well, when you get fucking healthy enough to go out there and play more than 6 games without stubbing your toe, you can open your mouth and say something. In the meantime, shut the hell up because you don't know what you're talking about. But he didn't say that. Instead, he looked like a guy who was just trying to find excuses.
Yeah.
And he let Thomas redefine what he was doing out there. And that was a difference. Drew Brees was a different kind of leader. Drew Brees didn't have to chew people out, although there is footage of him chewing people out.
Oh, yeah.
I was watching the 2008 season, and there's one game where he threw his friggin' helmet and was chewing out the receivers. If you didn't get along with Drew Brees, you ended up out on your ear. And you can ask, what is his name now? God, number 12. He went over, not 12, 13. No, what was his number? Kenny Stills in 2013 when he didn't get along with the program. Brees got help send him packing.
Yeah.
And the reason why the Saints team started losing in 2014, 2015, and 2016 was that leadership was gone.
Yep.
Those guys retired. And then now, once Malcolm Jenkins was out the building, once Drew Brees was out of the building, once Sean Payton was out of the building, those voices were gone. And now you've got a lot of guys out there who have the C on their jersey, but aren't leaders. They're not guys holding people accountable. And that's becoming increasingly obvious to me each week. So you're going to need, if we get a new coach, it's got to be a coach that's going to come out there and he's going to say things like what Sean Payton said when he first walked in and saw the easy chair in front of, what the hell is that tackle's name now? I forgot. But Wayne Gandy. That's Gandy. Wayne Gandy. Whose chair is this? And they're like, oh, it's Gandy. He's a veteran. It goes in the dumpster. Not, you got, 24 hours to take your chair out of here. He threw it in a friggin' dumpster. So when the guy shows up, his chair's in the dumpster. That's setting a tone.
Mm-hmm.
Dante Stallworth didn't last long. Not because he wasn't talented, but he didn't buy in. Yep. He was gone. And that's what it takes. It really takes somebody come in there and go kick some people's asses, send some name players out on their ass, and your attitude is, we're going to win with who we have. And if you're not part of this, get the hell out.
Yep.
That's really what you need. So all that being said, I didn't see this part. I didn't know that Rattler did say something to the coaching staff. What the hell are we doing? That must have been the timeout. That must have been that last timeout before they took the knee. And I think someone took the timeout, and I think Kubiak took the timeout before they had a discussion of whether or not they were going to actually try and go for a Hail Mary. And I think Allen just was so disgusted. He said, just take it in. Take a knee. Let's just go in. And once again, Allen fails to articulate it that way. He should have articulated it that way, but he doesn't. He takes the whole, I don't know who called the timeout. The hell you don't know who called the timeout. You know exactly who called the timeout.
And then when he did fess up to it, he said that it was Clint and he wasn't aware of it. Mm-hmm. Either way, it makes him look bad, like he has zero control over his organization, which is basically what is happening.
Yeah, that's what that's what does it. That's exactly what does it. It makes you look weak. It makes you look like you don't know what you're doing. This goes back to 2023 and the whole running a play out of the victory formation, apologizing for it, looking shocked that Arthur Smith was pissed off about it.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Payton, when he did that slap on that coach for Tampa Bay, that he took a little offense to, that was a little too hard of a slap. Payton didn't give a shit about that. Part of being a leader is you say things like, look, we thought maybe we might want to try something at the end of the game. We call timeout. During the timeout, we kind of talked ourselves out of it, or we decided, no, let's just pack it in. It's not going to happen. Yeah. And you let it go. And the same thing with the running the touchdown out of the victory formation. You say quite simply, look, we wanted to give Jamal Williams his touchdown. I don't like the way the players did it, but I understand why they did it. And just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
You've covered your bases. You say you didn't like it, but they did it, and you understand it. And it would have all gone away. But again, you look weak. So again, that's another reason why it's time to go, because you can't lead. You know the X's and O's. You know what it takes to win a football game, but you're not a leader. You're a Ray Handley. You're Phil Bankston. Phil Bankston replaced Vince Lombardi. Ray Handley replaced Bill Parcells with the Giants. You're not a Sean Payton. You're not a George Allen. You're not a, pick your coach that was successful once those guys were gone. And you're not going to get any better, unfortunately. You're in the Wade Phillips category of coaches, except Wade was a little more successful.
Yeah.
Wade was more successful, but you're in the Wade Phillips. You're in the Norv Turner category of coaches. Good coordinators that did not turn out to be good head coaches. So, Kamara got his extension finally.
Mm-hmm.
He got what? 24.5 million. 23 of it is guaranteed.
Yep.
Signing bonus at 15.5. So he got the cash up front he wanted.
Yep.
And he's got the security of going out as a Saint. And I didn't realize this. Kamara is about a little less than 300 yards away from surpassing Mark Ingram.
Less than 250. He's like 241 or 242. Yeah. So he's right there.
Yeah. So theoretically, he could do it this year.
Yep.
And become the Saints' all-time leading rusher. He's already the Saints' all-time leading touchdown guy.
Mm-hmm.
This is 7 years. Kamara's only been in the league 7 years. It's hard to believe that. It took Ingram 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, Ingram split time a lot in his career. And Kamara's not the guy who gets 100 yards rushing every week. He's a guy who gets 50 to 80 yards rushing and probably a good 50 to 100 yards receiving in his prime. So for him to already be passing Mark Ingram, and you can think about the Mark Ingram 100 yards rushing games, I think that's damn impressive. How do you feel about this contract?
Love it. I love it. And it's the type of contract you and I expected him to get clear back in training camp. Yeah. Where it wasn't this wasn't a record-setting type of money deal. He was just looking for better financial security, more guaranteed money. And that's what it was all about, folks, from the start. And even though it took a lot longer, about 2.5 months longer than what you and I thought it would, I don't think that there was ever a legitimate chance that Alvin Kamara was not going to be a New Orleans Saint. Alvin has showed no desire to be anything but a New Orleans Saint. So I think that that's why this deal got done, and that's why this deal was always going to get done. You dropped the phrase "in his prime" a minute ago. Alvin may have lost a step. It's hard to tell because he's been misused for the last 3 years. But even if he has lost a step, I think we can both agree that it's not much. That Alvin is still a very effective back. So this is money well spent for the Saints, and it's not going to be a big cap hit either, folks. So don't go crying down that river. About same old Saints kicking the can down the road. No. You should look at it like this, that if the Saints are going to do any kind of rebuild, whether it's soft, medium, or hard, Alvin Kamara is going to be the centerpiece to that rebuild. So I think that is key right there.
And that's the thing. I think Kamara's got a lot more tread in his tires. I think, unfortunately, the way this season has kind of played out, he's back to doing what he didn't really need to be doing, which was rushing between the tackles. I think their goal was for Kamara to be more of a pass receiving guy and a guy who ran the outside runs. Because you know who the leading rusher was for the Saints Thursday night? It was Kendre Miller.
It was Kendre Miller, yeah.
8 carries for 26 yards. Okay?
36
yards. 36 yards.
Not a great difference.
No, but regardless, he only touched the ball 8 times. But he showed inside running that you just did not see from anyone else. So Kendre Miller made a cameo appearance. Maybe he makes more of a game this time around. Maybe we get to see the offense run the way it's supposed to be run. I don't know. But that just goes to show you that, if you could find a back that can run between the tackles like Ingram did when Kamara first came in the league, you can get a lot of value out of this contract. You can get him to play for another 2 years. You might even get him to play for another 3 years because he takes care of his body that well. Now, I know what people are saying, too. Well, you're letting a guy play who's obviously getting to be too old,
He's not playing like he's too old. Stop looking. Yeah. In this case, you can't look at the calendar. You have to look at the performance on the field.
Yeah, exactly. This is not Cam Jordan in 2019, 2020, 2021 even, where you can start to see the wear and tear of the position taking its toll on him. Or Demario Davis this year. Clearly, the team, Kamara just is still that back who knows how to avoid the big hits. And that's the difference. To me, that's the difference. And it's why I'm not angry at this contract at all. It gives them the cap flexibility they need. There were $82 million before this contract, $82 million over the cap for next year. They'll do a couple of restructures. People aren't going to like that because that means, hey, you're extending guys. They want to this is the thing. They want the fire sale, and it's just not going to happen. Just like firing Dennis Allen mid-season, you're not going to have the fire sale. Somebody asked, what will it take to get Dennis Allen fired during the year? And I said, you know what it's going to take? It's going to take something off the field. It's not going to take anything on the field. They are going to give him 17 chances this year. He's got 10 left. He's had 7. At the end of the 17 chances, they'll tally it up and see what it did. And if he goes on a run at the end of the year, maybe upsets a couple of teams, does that whole 5-17 or whatever the hell the record is, gets that win in prime time against an over 500 team. That might be enough. I don't know. But I'm not going to sit here and worry whether they're going to keep him or not, because to me, it's what the record looks like at the end of the year. Yeah. That's going to be the deciding factor. So if you're talking, you want Allen to leave now so you don't have to worry about him coming back. He's got to do something like screw a Saints cheerleader in Gail's little prayer chapel at the Superdome. That's the kind of thing he'd have to do. I'm sorry.
Probably.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not going to be, the Saints gave up 300 yards rushing. The defense gave up 300 yards rushing. They're going to have to fire him for that. It's not going to happen, folks. That's not the way it's going to play out.
Nope.
Because they're going to look at it from the standpoint of, what do the players do? Who's the one giving up 300 yards rushing and why? That's what it's going to be. Or the only other thing I can see happening is if those guys, the C's on their jersey, go upstairs to Mickey Loomis's office or Gail's office and said, he's got to go. The players, we just had a players only meeting. They're about to revolt. He's got to go. Don't hold your breath. That's going to happen.
No, because as a person, they like Dennis Allen a lot, because the most respected voices on that team are who? Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu, defensive players. They like Dennis Allen, again, as a person. Mickey Loomis likes Dennis Allen as a person. Gail Benson likes Dennis Allen as a person. Dennis Allen has been loyal to this organization almost to a fault. Loyalty matters to these guys, and I'm not saying it shouldn't. And when I wrote that editorial, look it up, about how I believed that the time was now, over this mini bye after the Broncos game, to get rid of Allen. I didn't expect that they would. I even wrote that I didn't expect that they would. But I laid out the reasons why it should. Again, this is not the way this team does business, and I agree with you. I don't think nothing was ever going to happen in season unless something like ridiculously went off of the rails, like you were doing things, or your team was doing things to constantly wind up on TMZ. And I'm talking Deshaun Watson's level of things. As long as that doesn't happen, then Dennis Allen, like it or not, folks, is going to be your coach through the end of the year. Yeah,
fist fights in the locker room. Just utter chaos. Team leaders going at each other. And feeling like, I mean. Okay, so here are the kind of coaches that the Saints said need to go, or we're going to revolt. Believe it or not, one of them is coaching the best defense in the league right now, and that's Steve Spagnuolo.
Mm-hmm.
The team leaders on that team, Jonathan Vilma, Will Smith, they're like, this guy has got to go. He does not listen to us. Roman Harper was the same way. Roman Harper said it too. Malcolm Jenkins said it. He does not listen to us. He doesn't care what we think. He doesn't care what we do. So we have historically bad defense because we got a coach who doesn't listen to us. So he's got to go. And that's his only bad year as a defensive coordinator.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost like you want to say, were the players right or was the coach right?
The Spagnuolo 2012 thing has always mystified me. I would love to find out and I've had a chance to interview Jonathan Vilma once, and shame on me for dropping that ball. In hindsight, that should have been the first question out of my mouth. John, tell me what happened in 2012, because I've always wanted to know.
And I really think it's because Greg Williams gave those defensive players so much latitude on what to do, except go cover zero. in a playoff game.
Right.
But I think he gave them so much responsibility. Vilma called all the defenses based on what he was seeing. And I think Spagnuolo was trying to micromanage those personalities. And those weren't the kind of personalities you can micromanage. And he came in a bad time for the Saints because obviously, Bonnygate, Peyton suspended for the year. So he didn't have a voice behind him to back him up.
Yeah.
And Spagnuolo came in with Peyton's guys on that defense, Joe Vitt, people like that. No Dennis Allen in the secondary. I don't think Aaron Glenn was there yet. But
I don't think so.
Yeah. So, I think that it just wasn't the right fit for that kind of team. I think if he would have come instead of Rob Ryan, he would have come in 2014, 2015, one of those years, you probably have a different story and a more successful defense because by that time, Will Smith was gone, Vilma was gone. A lot of those leaders that were part of Greg Williams' defenses were gone. So I think I'm always curious too to see what happened. And I really attribute so much of it to people not being there to kind of get these guys in place. And this was a team that felt like they were that close to going to the Super Bowl, and it got taken away from them by Bountygate. They didn't have a chance to redeem themselves in 2012.
Yeah.
So, it was just a tough time for them. The other thing I wanted to bring up, we talked about a little bit about Kamara's contract. Spencer Rattler, I thought he regressed horribly against the Broncos compared to how he looked against Tampa. If these guys come back, now McCoy is still a few weeks away, but if we do get Cesar Ruiz, if we do get Patrick,
you were right, Lucas Patrick.
If we get Lucas Patrick back, and so you're only playing Connor at center, but you've got the other four guys in their position. Do you think that Spencer Rattler, and you have now Chris Olave, do you think Spencer Rattler has a chance of having a better game now with more protection?
I do. At the very least, it's a much more fair evaluation of what Spencer Rattler can do. Because I agree with you. I mean, he regressed badly against Denver, but you look at the deck that he was playing with. He had zero interior offensive line, no Taysom Hill, no Chris Olave, no Rashid Shaheed. That's a big loss for this offense too.
Yeah.
So like I said, he wasn't playing, with anybody and doing it on a short week, which is something that I was openly wondering about anyway. Hey, how's the rookie going to respond? Because really, he didn't have a full week of preparation in either of his first two starts. Dennis Allen, Clint Kubiak did right by him in saying that he was going to be the starter against Tampa Bay early in the week. But even then, that wasn't until like Tuesday, Wednesday, when you really get to put in the game plan. So, he has yet to have a full week of game plan preparation. Now he does. If Derek Carr isn't ready to go, and it doesn't look like he will be, I think the right decision is to continue with Rattler, if for no other reason than to give him a fair evaluation. I know Jake Haener made a couple of nice reads, made a couple of nice throws, but you went
defense.
Right. And Denver was still blitzing him though. And Haener was getting rid of the ball quick. I look at it this way. You, Dennis Allen, you, Clint Kubiak, you made the decision to go with Rattler over Haener when Carr was hurt. you have to stick with it now. I'm not saying stick with it through hell or high water if Carr's out for a bunch more weeks, but you have to. It's obvious you saw something in Rattler to choose him over Hainer, so you got to give the kid a fair week of preparation to really evaluate him. So yeah, I mean, and we don't know that Olave is going to be back. He still hasn't cleared protocol. Granted, it's only Tuesday evening, so he still has like 2 more days to do it before he has to officially be ruled out. Yeah. So I think that there's a better chance than not that Chris will be playing. You signed Valdez Scantling, so I mean doesn't move the needle a whole lot, but
name brand Traquan Smith.
Right. Don't ever say that word to me again. But I mean, nonetheless, he should have a better supporting cast than what he did against Denver or the second half against Tampa Bay. So yeah, I do expect a better performance out of him.
And the playbook is shrunk because he's a rookie. You can only run certain plays. You only can run certain plays because you've got the type of players that you have on the field. You can only run certain plays because you have a rookie quarterback. You can't throw the whole playbook at him. So there was a lot more drop back passing in the Denver game that wasn't there for the Tampa game. They were running a lot more bootlegs against Tampa. So, you can kind of open the playbook up a little bit more because you're now in your third game you're preparing him for. He's had 6 days. It's going to be almost 10 days before his next game. So he's had more time to study. Mm-hmm. And he's had more time to learn preparing for a game as a starter.
Yeah.
He's looking at film a lot more. So he's learning, and Carr is helping him because Carr's been very supportive of him, very quietly. People just didn't notice that, but he was the first one on the sideline to congratulate him after his first touchdown. He's the one talking to him on the sideline when they're going over the plays and stuff. So Carr is very supportive of him, whereas you've seen some teams where the quarterback's like, it's not my job to get this guy ready. The Tennessee Titans quarterback, when Malik Willis came on board, not my job to get him ready. He's going to have to learn on his own. Brett Favre felt that way about Aaron Rodgers when Aaron Rodgers came in.
Rodgers about Love, Roethlisberger about all the quarterbacks that they brought in. So, it happens a lot.
Yeah. People think, he's just going to be a good teammate. No, I'm not helping this guy take my job. Screw him. Go learn somewhere else. You're going to take my job. You're going to earn it. You're going to do it on your own. So it's the way some people are. It's just their personality. You're taking highly competitive people and you're making them compete for one job. What do you think is going to happen?
Right.
It's not kumbaya. That was my biggest complaint. If I had a complaint about Bountygate and the things about Bountygate, that was my biggest complaint, was that the attitude of, well, how can these guys be betting on things? How can these guys be, talking about hurting people? Well, they weren't really talking about hurting people. When we say, let's go kill them, we're not actually going to physically go out there and kill them.
Right.
I want to physically go out there and kill some people, but I'm not on the field.
Right.
But yeah, when they say these things, break them, get them, hit them, that they're not talking about hurting people. That's the way they play. But these guys compete on how many consecutive crumpled up paper cups someone can make in a basket, a garbage bag, or how many times, how far away you can stand on one end of the locker room and throw a Gatorade bottle into a barrel. They'll have bets on that.
Hell yeah.
Because they're all competitive people.
And I said the same thing during Bountygate, to the people, and I'm referring to the same type of people you are. These are people that never played or were never good at a competitive sport in their life. Mm-hmm. Because this kind of thing happens in locker rooms and huddles all the way back to middle school sports. Who got number 10? Take him out of the game. Again, you're not talking about a serious injury here. You talk about taking them out of the game
Yep.
or making them not want to get hit anymore.
Mhm.
You know, those kind of things, eliminating them from the game. Hey, beers are on me. You know, once you get to the at the high school level too, beers are on me tonight. For whoever, first round's on me for whoever gets the most hits on 12. It's that kind of thing. It's nothing dirty, but you have individual dirty players, and you've had it throughout every sport in the history of every sport.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the Bounty Gate was a witch hunt on Sean Payton and the New Orleans Saints, run by people who were never good at a competitive sport in their life. Fuck you, Roger Goodell.
Well, yeah. Bounty Gate was also an example because the league was being sued by former players who were suffering from the CTE or just physical ailments from playing the game, and they wanted the NFL and all the millions of dollars, billions of dollars it makes. So you know what? You're gonna have to kind of pay for some of this health care for these retired players because our insurance won't cover it because they're pre-existing conditions. You know, we want you to spend a little bit of that billions of dollars you make to provide health care to us players who sacrificed our bodies to play and make this league successful.
Mm-hmm.
And the league said, no, we're not paying that. We don't have to pay that. We care about player safety. And this is how we show we care about it. We found out that a team was doing a Smash for Cash program where they were providing financial incentives for players who took people out. Well, you know what? When I was coaching basketball, and I'm talking little girls basketball and boys basketball, they have one good player in the team, make him foul out, make her foul out. Sacrifice your body, get in her way, get her in foul trouble, so she has to sit on the bench. When she's on the bench or he's on the bench, they can't hurt us.
Yep.
We can do what the hell we want now
because
their best players on the bench. That's where I want them.
Yep. Or you always have that enforcer that basketball, hockey especially, not real good at the fundamentals, but just a physical hustle player. You have 5 fouls you can use right there. Yeah. Hey, Jimmy, I want you to use your 5 fouls on number 7 out there. Every foul because every time I put you in the game, you're going to foul anyway. You use every single foul on number 7. You make sure you hit them. Again, we're not talking about malicious intent here.
No.
It's just guess what, folks? Sports are competitive. Sports are physical. Shit happens.
I had a chance to win a game because the player that is their best player in the team can't play for the game in the game because they're in foul trouble or because for some reason the coach had to take them out of the game. You've increased the chances that my team has to win by doing that.
Yep.
That's not intentionally hurting anybody. That's just to get them off the field. And with Bounty Gate, if they made it sound worse. Oh, look, he's talking about hitting a guy with a bad hamstring. No, I want that dude with the bad hamstring to have to stretch that hamstring out and re-injure it. So he's like, oh, God damn, I'm not ready yet. I have to go to the sidelines. I have to play in the sidelines. I'm not going to baby that guy. What did Sean Payton do in that Philadelphia game in 2018 when the first play from scrimmage, he sent Mark Ingram right at the guy who Jones, I think his name was, the cornerback. Sidney Jones, the guy who's just coming back from injury, he sent somebody in right after him, run right at him, and let him hit you and see what happens. And sure enough, I got to go to the sideline, coach. I can't go out and play. That hurt. I'm still hurt. You're not intentionally injuring somebody. You're testing them to see if they're ready to play. But in Bounty Gate language, it's, oh, you targeted that guy. Oh, You hit that guy too hard. It's a contact sport, people. Your job is to win the game. What did they do to Brett Favre in that NFC Championship game? They went after Brett Favre. I've got the book. I read it. Sean Payton's home team. He tells the story about the guy, the old man who doesn't want to go out in the rain anymore. They wanted to turn Brett Favre into the old man who doesn't want to go out in the rain. When you're a young man, you don't care if the weather's like. You get in the car and you drive. When you're an old man, you're a little more cautious because your reflexes aren't as fast. You're a little more anxious. That's what they want to make Brett Favre do. Make him anxious, make him careless, make him feel like I got to do something, and he's not comfortable doing it. That's not intentionally hurting the guy.
Nope.
But I tell you what, that hit by the player whose name will not be said, but number 42, coming in on safety blitz, and NFL film shows that in slow motion. Oh my God. You just see his chest cave in.
I thought he killed him. I did. I thought he killed him.
Oh my God. And I was like, and I love Brett Favre as a player. When he was with the Packers, I loved him because he was a guy out there just having fun. Underhand passes, whatever it took to win a game. You know, I enjoyed that. But man, him hitting that, I was all like, yeah, hit that dude, knock him out. Just, it's how you're going to win the game. Where there was a much better chance of winning when Brett Favre was not comfortable back there.
Yep.
So that's how you win the game. And there's something else I wanted to bring up, and I've just lost my train of thought because we went on about Bountygate. We talked about Spencer Rattler. We talked about the injuries, talking about Kamara's contract. I don't even remember what I tease this show with anymore now. We get ready to, I had to stick it in here since we're doing the Chargers. The greatest non-Saints game I've ever seen in my entire life. The 81 Chargers versus the 81 Dolphins.
Yes.
Whenever you talk about the Chargers, this game will always be at the top of my list of games to talk about. And it's more than just the fact that, this is why I brought it in too. Saints Chargers connections over the years.
You saw my piece?
Yes, I saw your piece, and I thought about it too, because here's two former Saints on this team, Wes Chandler and, or as Peyton Manning used to say, Wes Chandler, and Chuck Muncie on this team. The trade for Chuck Muncie netted Ricky Jackson. Of course, we also got Drew Brees from them. Jim Everett, we traded to San Diego in exchange when he was ready to go because of Ditka and Danny Abramowitz as his offensive coordinator. Who else did you mention in the piece? Oh, Darren Sproles too.
Darren Sproles. I mentioned. I mean, I forgot all about Jim. As big a fan as I was throughout his career, I actually forgot that he was traded to San Diego.
He beat the Saints too.
Yeah. So I forgot about that. Jim, if you're watching, I'm sorry, man. I take every opportunity to bring you up in articles, and I've dropped the ball on this one. But yeah, I mean, I focused my piece on Wes Chandler and Chuck Muncie going from the Saints to the Chargers, and Drew Brees, obviously, and Darren Sproles going from the Chargers to the Saints. And then in my last paragraph, and by the way, throw in, Patrick Robinson and Robert Meacham are two Saints who went to play for the Chargers briefly and came back to New Orleans to finish out their careers.
You know, and the Chargers were a lot like the Saints in the 70s. Once the merger happened, there's Wes Chandler right there doing the punt return. When the Chargers got into the NFL, they became the dumping ground for players, problem players, old players, whatever. Johnny Unitas finished his career there, and it was a cocaine-laced team. Deacon Jones finished his career there. In fact, we had right before this was the 73 Saints Chargers game, and I only threw it in there because they had the old uniforms on. But that game there was Deacon Jones's last year in the NFL. So the Chargers were kind of like the Saints, where careers went to die. This is just a loose connection, but when the Saints fired Hank Stram in 1977, the Cardinals also fired Don Coryell in 77. They went with Dick Nolan as a head coach. The Chargers, I think, had Tommy Prothero.
Yes.
For 5 games in 78. Then they fired him and brought in Don Coryell. And Don Coryell turned the Chargers into the Superchargers that you see here. The only reason why this team didn't win a Super Bowl, well, a couple reasons, but the biggest reason, contract disputes. So you had Fred Dean go to the 49ers and John Jefferson go over to the Green Bay Packers. No. Yeah. The Packers.
Yep.
Yeah. With James Lofton.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they made the trade for Wes Chandler, by the way, was because they had to trade away John Jefferson rather than pay these guys. But I always wonder what would have happened if Meekin could have handled the ego and hired Don Coryell to coach the Saints in 1978, and Archie Manning gets to learn under, Don Coryell and Ernie Zampese.
Yep.
And those guys, this offense becomes the basis of the Cowboys' Super Bowl runs under Jimmy Johnson, becomes the basis of the Rams at Jim Everett's peak. All those things. I mean, what would Archie Manning have been like? Instead of Kellen Winslow, you're throwing to Henry Childs. You got Wes Chandler, you got Chuck Muncie. What would the Saints have been Air Coryell in the Superdome on that fast track?
Oh, I think absolutely, because we know what Wes Chandler and Chuck Muncie did for the Superchargers, for Air Coryell. We know what Kellen Winslow did. Now, Kellen Winslow was a freak, but Henry Childs was a pretty damn good tight end too. And for you, for those of you, I like to call us experienced NFL fans like Alan and I. Do you remember what James Brooks did for those Chargers teams? Well, Tony Galbraith was considered the best pass catching back, in the NFL at that time. I don't think there's any doubt whatsoever, that the Saints, as it was, what was it? It was either the 78 or 79 Saints that actually led the league in passing anyway.
79.
So you take that and you exponentially add success onto it. Because one thing about Don Coryell and Ernie Zampese, they coach offenses, man. They'll put yards and points on any defense.
Yeah, they knew offensive talent too. They would have gotten better offensive linemen for Archie, better tackles on the outside. It just would have been interesting to see how this would have turned out. Kellen Winslow got drafted in 1979.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about a team that probably takes takes Winslow over taking Russell Erxleben.
I think almost definitely, yeah.
Yeah. We were talking about Henry Childs, but, it's entirely possible he goes and drafts in 79, goes and drafts Kellen Winslow. So, maybe 1980 doesn't happen.
There's no maybe about it. I think this team did what the Chargers did, run through the conference and at least make a run or two to the conference championship. Maybe no further because they didn't have a defense either. But man, you had Kellen Winslow. We didn't even talk about Ike Harris, who was a big play wide receiver.
Yeah.
Guido Merkins, was the type of guy that you could use in various ways too. I don't think there's any doubt that the Saints would have did something similar to what the Chargers did in the AFC through the late 70s and early 80s.
Those 49ers Saints games would have been totally different.
Oh, yeah.
With those two offenses going against each other, it just would have been. And so that's something that's always in the back of my head whenever I think about, the what ifs. What if in '78 you make the decision to bring in Don Coryell, who had a lot of success with St. Louis, but he couldn't get past the Cowboys, and the Redskins got him a couple times, but he couldn't get past the bullies on the block. He couldn't get past the Vikings, couldn't get past the Rams, those kind of things. The Rams were in decline in the 80s, which was why you brought in, well, I shouldn't say in decline, but it was in transition in the 80s, which is why you brought in, John Robinson to be the head coach. Just to change this team up, change that team culture, go away from Chuck Knox and bringing in much more of Chuck Knox was gone. I shouldn't say that. It was really Ray Malavisi. The 1 year they tried to bring back George Allen didn't even last all of preseason. And they had Ray Malavisi take over. So I think about that a lot because there are a lot of connections between the Chargers and the Saints, parallels with the culture and parallels with the kind of teams they were, especially in the 70s. And what happened when Dick Nolan took over to the Saints and, Eric Coryell takes over out there in San Diego. So this is a fun thing to watch. Just the Epic in Miami. I would recommend watching this just to get a feel for this game because it was an unusual game from the standpoint of you just didn't see this much offense in playoffs, even in the early 80s. You just didn't see things like that. It was much more defensive-minded games.
And this is also not the kind of game that Don Shula felt comfortable coaching. I know a lot of people think about Shula and Marino. Shula, and this is the mark of a good coach too. Shula completely changed his style.
Yes.
When he had the chance to get Dan Marino. This was pre-Dan. This was 2 years before Dan Marino was even even on their team. So the Dolphins were still primarily win with the running game, win with your kicking game, and shut people down with your defense type of defense or type of team. San Diego ran off to a 24-0 lead, and Shula turned to the best relief pitcher in NFL history, Don Strock, and I was only not even 10, I was 9 or 10 at the time. I still remember this game like it was yesterday. It was one of the most entertaining games I have ever seen.
I put it on. And it got to be 24-0. And I'm like, okay, this game's pretty much over with. I got up, did a couple things, went in the back, and it was the second quarter. And it was about a series before the hook and lateral. So it was almost halftime. And I was like, holy cow, they're back in this game. And I watched it from that point forward because it was just drama. Every drive mattered. It was one of those kind of games. This is the beginning of the Killer Bees defense because this Dolphins team goes to the Super Bowl the next year. With Woodstock, essentially. But it goes to the Super Bowl the next year. Then the following year is the year they get Dan Marino. And this team was called the Killer Bees. This defense was called the Killer Bees because it just so happened the bulk of these guys all had last names that began with B. Lyle Blackwood, Kyle Blackwood, Baumhammer. They had A.J. Dewey. He kind of threw it all off.
Yeah.
You just had a lot of guys out there with B's in their names. And this is the era. For those of you who are Gen X, you all know this. But when I was growing up, people in the early 80s, we all heard about the Africanized killer bees that were supposed to be coming from South America, slowly moving up Central America, New Mexico, and by the late 90s, early 2000s, we were supposed to have killer bee swarms
Yep.
in the United States. And we're going way off topic here. But
Yeah, we are.
but
I know, and I forget the name of the movie, but I know you saw it too.
They had about 3 of them out there.
Well, they came through the vents in the car. I still have nightmares about that.
That was the one that was filmed in New Orleans. That was the one. It was called what was it called? I can picture it. It was a red Volkswagen Beetle. And the way they had to kill the bees, because it's always Mardi Gras in a New Orleans movie.
Yeah.
But the way they had to kill, for those of you who have gone to the Superdome, you know this to be true. The way they had to kill them was they brought them into the Superdome and turned the air conditioner on. And the air conditioning sent them into hibernation because it was so cold in there. And I can remember that red Volkswagen, because somehow they were attracted to red. They were attracted to sounds. But yeah, they drove this red Volkswagen into the dome in the middle of the field, the football field, like the 50-yard line, and they turned the AC on full blast. And you just see them all falling off this thing. It was hilarious. It's something bees. What was the name of that film? But they had like 3 of them because the 70s were all disaster films and monster films, So you had, Poseidon Adventure, Earthquake, The Towering Inferno, and then you had, all the different movies about shark attacks, starting with Jaws. Well, this was another one. This was like, not the Swarm, but it was something bees. But yeah, it was Mardi Gras in New Orleans, and killer bees are killing people. I always get a big kick out of this. A scene where they go to this food stand, and it's going to be a parade, but there's nobody around. And there's just one guy working this booth, and there's a beehive. He didn't notice this thing. There's a beehive in the back of this thing, and these people ordering hot dogs at Mardi Gras. What the hell? Popeyes existed. Nobody eats hot dogs at Mardi Gras. It's Popeyes fried Savage Bees. I knew my brother would remember it. Because he and I both watched this. My brothers watched all these horror films. Yeah. The little girl with the little bell walking in the field in the very beginning, and the bees get her. The one that upset me the most, I hate to say this, but the one that upset me the most was the dog. They killed the dog.
I get upset when dogs die in movies too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't give a shit about people. Kill off all you want. Leave the dogs alone.
Right. Especially stupid people.
Yeah.
Sorry. You watch horror films, you're like, well, that was stupid. Yeah, that person deserved to die for that. All the lights are off in the house. I hear creepy noises. Let me get naked and take a shower. Good idea. Yeah. That's why I always love that commercial. What was it? I think it was Geico. But it was the kids in the horror film. Why don't we get in a running car? Are you crazy? Let's go hide in the cemetery. Let's hide behind all the chainsaws. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to bed.
I know. Last thing before I let you go to bed, though, what do you have coming up in the Bayou Blitz?
We got Tyrone Hughes with us tomorrow night.
Oh, awesome.
And I had a phone call with Ty over the weekend. You know that man can talk.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to put together a piece, where I want to get at least 2 or 3, if not more, former Saints players, and just get their thoughts on the state of the team, specifically the state of a certain head coach. And Ty wanted me to call him. So I did. And 45 minutes later, I was like, "Oh yeah, you want to come on to Bayou Blitz on Wednesday?" He goes, "Oh yeah, because we're promoting something anyway. He's part of a promotion, which we'll talk about tomorrow. So yeah, we're excited to get Tyrone Hughes back. I believe he's going to probably be with us for the whole hour. So that's going to be a fun conversation for sure."
Absolutely, Tyrone Hughes is a great interview because he's always got an opinion. He's got something to say.
Yep.
Just don't ask him about why did Jim Moore not play you at wide receiver?
I did once, and it was a mistake. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be an hour conversation.
Yeah.
That is going to be something, because if there's anything I'm critical of more for, that was that, because I thought he would have made a great receiver, and Tyrone thought he would have made a great receiver too, and he'll give you an hour and he'll tell you why he was a great receiver.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tyrone's a great interview. He really has a good feel for a Saints team in transition, kind of like what they're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
He was there in '96 when Moore resigned. So that would be a great commentary to see if he sees a lot of the same things that happened in '96 kind of replaying themselves out here.
He actually does, but I'll let him tell you guys all about that.
Absolutely. I'm not surprised he doesn't, because he that would fit right up the alley, because it's a lot of that stuff that's going on, and we can see it, and that's why we spend so much time in this show talking about Dennis Allen losing the team. They haven't quit, but he's losing the team because they've kind of tuned him out.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate. In the meantime, Bayou Blitz tomorrow night?
Yes. Yeah. 8 p.m. Central.
All right. Bayou Blitz tomorrow night. We didn't even talk about the other thing I was going to bring up was, we didn't really mention Rashid Shaheed getting injured in the last game, but did you see last night, Chris Godwin, same kind of thing.
Yep.
A meaningless scoring drive. It's going to kind of torpedo their season, because Mike Evans has a bad hamstring. So, it's something about these coaches nowadays. They just don't know. I get you don't want to quit, but the game's out of hand. Pull some of those guys out. Just run the ball.
Fantasy football, Alan. Fantasy football, garbage yards and garbage points mean something on the world culture now.
I know, and gambling's playing into it, because they were scoring points so they could beat the gambling totals. And I hate to say it, my kids do it too.
Sure.
Those FanDuel things where you can, so-and-so is going to get a touchdown. So-and-so is going to get so many yards in this game. You can bet as the game's going on.
Mm-hmm.
All those things matter. So it's, don't get me started. We'll be here for another hour and you're ready to go to bed.
Yeah.
We'll have a conversation about this after the season, because I think between the gambling, fantasy football, and analytics, it's ruining coaching too.
Absolutely.
We'll get into that next time. In the meantime, thank you guys for sticking with us. Let me go off the rails about the Savage Beasts. Hey, I tried to make it about the Saints. It took place in New Orleans. It ends in the Superdome. It's a hokey TV movie, but it is available somewhere. Someone's got it. Freevee, Hulu, Pluto TV. Someone's got it. If you really want to watch a cheeseball movie about New Orleans, you watch that. And it's really, really bad, but it's really entertaining. It's Halloween. You might as well watch a cheesy horror film. Thank you guys for sticking with us. We'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.
Good night.